Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's video. So it's going to take us into the first week or so of January, and we'll be able to extend out a little bit beyond that with the extended GFS. Have a look at the ECMWF. I'll bring you up to date with SSW2, and of course we're going to start off talking about developments in the stratosphere in terms of the sudden stratospheric warming that we've been talking about over the past couple of weeks. So I'll get over that for you very shortly, just to say that tomorrow we'll have JMA Friday up as usual, and also a week to 10 day video update. So gradually the videos are beginning to get back to a bit of normality after the Christmas period. So the two videos tomorrow will be the normal Friday videos. But that's for tomorrow. Let's get on with today's video, and we're going to start off by having a look at what's happening in the stratosphere. So this is from the JMA. We are beginning to see signs of this sudden stratospheric warming getting into the North Pole at 10 HPA. So this is the temperature chart for 10 HPA over the North Pole. You're at the top levels of the atmosphere and the stratosphere. The grey line is the trend line for this time of the year. The black line shows how those stratospheric temperatures have been performing at 10 HPA through this season, and where we are right now. So this is where we are right now. We're just there with that black line. It is lifting up, not dramatically yet. You'll just say that is a rather regular sort of warming of the stratosphere, but it's okay. We're somewhere between around minus 50 and minus 40 degrees at 10 HPA. To reach a level of a sudden stratospheric warming, we need to be going up to here, around minus 10, minus 20, somewhere around there. If we lift that black line up to that kind of level, then we would be able to say we have had a sudden stratospheric one. So at the moment, we're around 30 to 40 degrees short of kind of like the required temperature to say that we've had a sudden stratospheric warming. But it is warming up, and it is going to continue to do so over the next day or so. This very latest from the GFS model, courtesy of metroseal.fr. So you see we still have these very intense red colours here in the stratosphere over Siberia and over Russia. Just there, just outside of the actual North Pole itself at the moment. But you can see that over North Pole, the temperature is lifting up, or I suppose the North Pole is a little bit more in that area. So you see that over the North Pole, temperature is starting to lift up, and will continue to do so. If we run through the temperature forecast, you can see how those orange colours push further. Not the red colours, they ease away, but the orange colours push further into the North Pole. We push out these blue colours, which are the cold temperatures at 10 HPA, along with the polar vortex at its roots. They're pushed southwards into North America and to the Atlantic and Europe. We get very, very close to an actual split of the polar vortex just there. Say around the 2nd of January, we are becoming very, very close to splitting polar vortex somewhere around the North Atlantic or eastern parts of Canada. Just doesn't quite split, though. We just avoid getting a split. But it is a very, very close run thing through those days of 2nd, 3rd, 4th of January. Then we go into a more extended range. That's how we look. And we have another go at warming the stratosphere up, actually. This is something that's just appearing in Mars over the last couple of days. Another secondary warming appearing there. Excuse me. Roughly in the same place as we have the warming right now, but not reaching the same intensity as the warming that we have right now. That's how we finish up with the stratospheric temperatures at 10 HPA on the 12th of January. And it still looks pretty cold, really, with stratosphere over the North Atlantic and into Europe. Still not a genuine split of the polar vortex at its roots, but certainly these milder temperatures that we have over North Pole have really given these cold temperatures and polar vortex at their roots a real battering over the previous days. So there will be a definite weakening of the polar vortex at its roots in the stratosphere. But how long it would take to notice that in terms of the troposphere and that's the important boundary level of actually where we're getting our weather from. How long it would take to notice that weakening of the polar vortex in the troposphere, that's an unknown sort of quantity at the moment. This is the ECMWF via the University of Berlin. So this is how the temperatures were looking yesterday, and hopefully they do mark out where the North Pole is on these charts with a black cross, so the North Pole itself is just there. You can see that temperatures were lifting up through the course of Boxing Day, so that's the level that we've gone to at 10 HPA on Boxing Day. It's also about right for what the chart is showing. You notice the most intense colours, the brightest of the reds, are a little bit to the east of the North Pole over there. But as we go through to this chart for today, forecast chart for today, 27th of December, you'll see the colours have intensified over the North Pole again. So we can expect this black line to increase further when this chart updates tomorrow. I would be anticipating this should be increasing to around that sort of level tomorrow. When this chart updates for today, you see what I mean. And then that's how things are looking on the 28th, how they're forecast to be looking on the 28th of December by the ECMWF at University of Berlin website. And by that point, we're going up to this kind of level, seemingly, which is around minus 20 something like that. So on this chart, if that's right, that should lift the temperature up to that sort of level. Should lift the black line, I should say, up to that sort of level. And that's getting to sudden stratospheric warming type levels. So over the next couple of days, we should see this black line moving up. It's taking a little while to lift this black line up, but eventually by around Saturday, when we look at this on Saturday or Sunday, we should be pretty much at sudden stratospheric warming type levels if these forecasts that we're seeing here for the 27th and 28th of December are correct. Now, of course, can't maintain that level indefinitely in the stratosphere, so that temperature level. So by the time we get through to early January, we are lowering the temperature then, lowering it down, but still warmer than average, lowering it down to around minus 30 to minus 40, something like that. So on this chart, the black line, by the weekend, the black line should be somewhere up around here, I would have thought. And then, as getting to early January, we'll probably see the black line dropping to somewhere around there. So the black line should do something like that. Let's see how straight I can draw a line. Not very, so it should go somewhere like that, and then it should start to drop down to that sort of level, between around minus 30 and minus 40, but still warmer than average. Then we go through to day 10, which is the 5th of January, and by then things are cooling down in the stratosphere as you expect them to do, so we can't maintain that level of intense warmth more than a few days in the stratosphere, so things start to cool down. And then we will be looking to see what the tropospheric response is. One of the ways we'll look to see if we're going to get a tropospheric response is to go down to 30 HPA, which is lower down, and see whether we're getting this warming pushing down into the lower reaches of the stratosphere. That's how things look on the 2nd of January. We can see that warming is taking place. It's never quite as intense at 30 HPA as it is at 10 HPA, but nevertheless we are getting warming appearing at that level of 30 HPA. So the temperatures are lowering there. The temperatures are warming, I should say, closer to the troposphere at 30 HPA, and then that's how things look on the 5th of January, day 10. Again, signs that after that initial warming, things begin to cool a little bit at 30 HPA. By that point, we're looking on into the troposphere, see whether this warming will set up a bubble of high pressure in the troposphere, whether it will set up a blocking feature. This forecast of the zonal winds and fluxes, so we're going to find that the zonal winds go into reverse at 1 HPA. We've been expecting that for quite a while. Reversal of the zonal winds at 1 HPA coming up. That's the very top level of the so going down to 10 and 30 HPA, we see that at 10 HPA, which is the blue line just here and this black dash line, we see we're going to get a reversal of the zonal winds at 10 HPA. They're going to go into reverse, and at 30 HPA, getting very close to reversal of the zonal winds as well. So it's still on course. It's taking a little while to penetrate this very intense warming of the stratosphere at 10 HPA from Siberia into the North Pole. But we are going to get there, I think, by the time we get through to the weekend. We should be at a level of temperature, but we can say that a sudden stratospheric warming has happened over the North Pole at 10 HPA. This is likely to lead to a warming at 30 HPA, lower down, closer to the troposphere. We'd also like to see a reversal of the zonal winds at 10 HPA anyway, possibly also by sort of the end of the first week of January, possibly 30 HPA as well. The big unknown is still whether we're going to get a split in polar vortex. It doesn't look like we are going to get an actual split of the polar vortex at this stage, but as I say, it could well be that this is going to weaken the polar vortex at its roots in the stratosphere, not in the troposphere initially. So don't be expecting to see a weakening of the polar vortex in the troposphere for a while, but at its roots in the stratosphere, this will undoubtedly cause a weakening of the polar vortex. It's going to be pushed around, displaced, and really given a battering over the next week or two. And so if we get any sort of subsequent warming over the course of January or February, we will almost certainly at some point see quite a pronounced split of the polar vortex at its roots, I would have thought, but we're still waiting to see signs of that. So obviously we'll keep you updated with the sudden stratospheric warming over the next few days. Right, so this is what's happening in the troposphere. So this is at 500 millibars. These are the 500 millibar height anomaly flowcharts from Penn State University. We've got the ECMWF on the top, and the GFS, which we'll have a look at in a moment, is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 85 feet, boundary level of the atmosphere, what's called troposphere. It's where weather is taking place, and so red is extrapolating to above average heights, which is high pressure, and blue is extrapolating to below average heights, which is low pressure. So in the 7 to 10 day time frame, this takes us up to around the 7th of January, so we're going towards the end of the first week of the new year with this. We still have, with the ECMWF, an area of above average heights, high pressure over UK, averaging quite a long way northwards as well. It means that the flow and the jet are doing something like that, probably pulling down winter into eastern, southeastern parts of Europe with that trough of low pressure. We're under this ridge, but it's not overly mild by this point under this ridge. It's probably quite cold, actually, as the air would be feeding in from gently, anyway, would be feeding in gently from the east to northeasterly type direction. GFS is quite different though, so in the 7 to 10 day time frame with the GFS, we've got the Atlantic really putting this ridge under pressure with low pressure out in the Atlantic, bringing the jet stream across the Atlantic, indicated by those black lines there, bringing that across the Atlantic into Europe, and the ridge is quite a bit further eastwards and southeastwards. So basically the ridge is collapsing as the Atlantic is pushing it in and flattening off. Jet stream is flattening off that ridge of high pressure. In the 7 to 10 day time frame, it's turning more unsettled through the first week of January, whereas the ECM wants to maintain that ridge quite strongly. And we see this on the GFS ensembles as well. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average, looking at Halifax in the northwest of England today. So over the next week or so, this is where we are right now, starting off. That's like the 3rd of January to 5th of January, just there. And over the next week to 10 days, or over the next week, it looks like we're going to keep temperatures way above average, upper air temperatures anyway, way above average, and except for a little bit of rain there sometime around the end of the week or into the start of the weekend. Except for that, looks like it's basically dry up to around the 3rd or the 4th of January. So dry and very mild conditions. Then in the second part of the first week of January and through to the second week of January, that period just here, temperatures are lowering quite a bit from where they are around the new year, And it's also turning much more unsettled. Look at all these rainfall spikes reappearing. Excuse me again. So that's the ridge collapsing. The Atlantic's coming back. And as we go further into the first week of January and get into the second week of January, it's cooler, but it's also a lot more unsettled with bouts of heavy rain pushing in from off the Atlantic. That does look like a little bit of an Atlantic onslaught is being forecast there by the GFS ensembles with those large precipitation spikes. Temperature anomalies from the 27th of December to the 4th of January are above average, a milder than average week coming up for the UK, for Ireland and most of Europe as well, and very dry. Any change to unsettled conditions happens beyond this period, so from the 27th of December to the 4th of January, much drier than average, dry and mild, basically summing it up. So that's how the GFS, latest GFS run, 6-o'clock run, looks for the weekend, running up towards the new year. High pressure is well and truly in control of the weather. It has to go at ridging northwards there on New Year's Day. It's trying to get a ridge up towards Iceland. But very quickly, the Atlantic starts to flatten that off again. So ridge begins to push down into central and then eventually southeastern parts of Europe. Notice we do have a lot of cold air around the back of a ridge, pulling down into the east of Europe and around the Black Sea just there. So winter really biting initially in the northeast of Europe and then moving down that eastern side of Europe and possibly finishing up in the southeastern part of the Mediterranean. But the ridge is collapsing, so it's started to try and turn more unsettled with the GFS, and it does eventually, by the time you get through to day 10, that's Sunday the 5th of January, a little bit before day 10, but by the time you get through to Sunday 6th, we really have unleashed the Atlantic. So the GFS really bringing the Atlantic back there in the second half of next week. And by the 6th of January, we are well and truly back under the cosh with those areas of low pressure, bringing bouts of heavy rain and really strong winds as well at day 10. And then we go off into the extended period, and it looks pretty unsettled, really. No change to the basic setup, which is high pressure coming to the south, low pressure to the north. Quite stormy at times, potentially, I would have thought. Through this period, heavy rain, maybe even gale force winds moving in from off the Atlantic. This is the icon model. This is one of the more higher resolution models. We only normally look at the icon when we're doing things like snow watch. But this one is showing for the weekend, very similar to the GFS for the weekend, with high pressure dominating the weather up to weekend. That's New Year's Day. Again, we're trying to reach that high pressure northwards, but it does have a little bit more high pressure, the icon, around Greenland and Iceland. And in the extended range, actually what it does is run up towards a week away. So this is Thursday the 3rd of January. We have got quite a block beginning to set up there to the north of the UK. We've of course got this cold plunger there moving into northern Europe with this trough of low pressure just here. So we've got that trough of low pressure just there sinking into many central northern parts of Europe. But the difference compared to the GFS is that the high pressure is ridging much, much further northwards at the moment. This is pulling in, even for us, it's pulling in cold northerly airstreams. That's as far as you can go with the icon. It goes to 180 hours, Thursday the 3rd of January. It does look pretty cold, actually, and it does look quite blocked as well. The main cold, you see by the upper air temperatures, is to our east and northeast. So Scandinavia, most of central, northern and east Europe has been plunged into the freezer. We're on the periphery of that, but we certainly are a lot colder there with the icon model compared to the GFS. Could it be that the higher resolution models, such as the icon, might be starting to pick up that southern stratospheric warming, whereas the GFS isn't yet at a high enough resolution to pick up the impacts of the southern stratospheric warming? I'm not sure whether that's possible, but certainly that's quite a big difference at day 10, or it's actually a little bit short of day 10. So as I say, that's the Thursday, the 3rd of January, 180 hours. Let's go back to the GFS and have a look at what that's showing at the same time frame. So that's back to there. You see, very different between the GFS and the icon in the placement of that ridge. The icon much further north with the ridge, much less activity in the Atlantic, and this cold trough, which the GFS has sinking through the far east and northeast of Europe, the icon has that covering pretty much most of Central Northern Europe. So very different between those two models. ECMWF looks like that high pressure is in control of the weather for the new year. Again, we tried to reach out further north. So it does go further north with the ECM than the GFS shows anyway. As we get through to the beginning of January, we find that high pressure generally just sitting around country. It does collapse a little bit as we go up towards day 10, but it's certainly closer to us compared to what the GFS shows. So this is how things look at day 10 with the ECM. We saw it on the height anomaly flow chart. We're still really dominated by high pressure. Its position is across central parts of Europe. It's probably close enough to us to be bringing in some pretty cold southeasterly winds, although the ice bars look southerly. The air would be originating from Central Europe, so pretty cold, actually, at day 10 with the ECM WF. Not as much of a blocking feature as the icon has going up towards day 10, but certainly more of a blocking feature than the GFS has at day 10, whereas GFS at day 10 just has us under a real Atlantic onslaught. So huge differences between the GFS and the ECM at day 10. Again, that could be down to the southern stratospheric warming. What happens when you get these warmings of the stratosphere, major warmings of the stratosphere occurring, is that initially the models become very confused about what the impacts of that warming are going to be. They can see it happening, but they can't see how the pieces are going to be put together, if you like. It's almost like throwing a bomb into the weather system and everything's being ripped apart at its roots in the stratosphere, although we're not splitting the southern stratospheric, we're not splitting the PV, polar vortex. Nevertheless, this is a very major event that's occurring in the stratosphere, and the models are seeing everything being ripped apart, if you like, and then we've got to try and put it all back together, but it will be put back together in a different way to what it was before, if you see what I mean. So they're trying to come up with solutions and possibilities of how this is all going to be brought back together again after the southern stratospheric warming. That causes a lot of uncertainty, it causes a lot of intra-model variation and unreliability, and so that's why you're seeing so many options on the table there in this sort of day 5 to 10 time frame. It's probably one of the reasons anyway why that's happening. So there is a chance that we might, if the icon is right, we might be seeing colder conditions actually in the early part of the new year. But if the GFS is right, just a real Atlantic onslaught coming up. I'll have to keep you posted. These are the various scenarios that are playing out within the ECMWF ensembles via the postage stamps, and this is at the Icelandic Met Office. So loads of options on the table at day 10. Look at all these options that we've got to talk about. So we've got 13 ensemble members, ECM ensemble members, that have us, it's very similar to the GFS, has us in an Atlantic onslaught type pack with low pressure out to the west, feeding in a westerly wind. They have got raised heights up to the northeast a little bit, but generally those 13 are very unsettled. We've got number 12 at day 10, but looks like that again very unsettled, in line with what the GFS is showing, probably low pressure dominating from off the Atlantic. But then we've got 11 that have us under high pressure. Look at this, we have a ridge of high pressure at day 10, with these 11 ECM ensemble members ridging through the UK and also extending quite a way north as well. So those are extending back towards what could be northern blocking to the north of Greenland. And then we've got 9, including the operational run, what we're just looking at, that have us again under high pressure. And the colours are so intense it's hard to make out where we are, but we'll be around there somewhere. And these ones are ridging the high more towards the northeast, and so they'll be pulling in colder air from an east or southeasterly direction, possibly. And then we've got another 6 that have, again, high pressure to our east and northeast, more centred over towards Scandinavia, with low pressure then out to the west. So between the various options, it looks like it's around a 50-50 split really between the ensemble members that are very unsettled and the ensemble members that are more anticyclonic. With those 6 just there, we're probably bringing a relatively mild southwesterly wind, but it's quite high pressure we've got over Scandinavia, so we'll have to watch out in a few days beyond that. But that's just a split that's within the model output, I think. But we talked about via the GFS, the icon and the ECM, all the options are there within the ECM ensembles as well. So the ECM ensembles are split about what's happening at day 10. And then we go through to 2 weeks away, which is 360 hours. And these, again, are various options that are on the table, minus the operational GFS run, which stops at the operational ECM run, which stops at day 10. So we've got 22 ensemble members with this big trough of low pressure centred over top of the UK. Obviously, those ones on the 11th of January are really, really unsettled. And then we've got 15 ensemble members with a ridge out to the west of the UK, and also tying back towards Greenland as well. Those ones could be quite a bit colder, maybe bring wind in from the north. And then we've got 14 over here that look like this. They've got deep low pressure close to the country, but they are raising the heights to the northeast, these 14 with high pressure over Scandinavia. And so although these ones are unsettled, winds will probably be in that kind of direction. We'll have to see how quickly that trough is maintained before the high pressure starts to try and back wind back into the east across Scandinavia. So a lot of uncertainty in the day 7 to 10 time frame. Finally, we just finish off with CFS V2. So these are 500 millibar heights broken down into week periods. The first week period takes us from the 27th of December to the 2nd of January. A big ridge in the coming week, dominating the weather, going to be mainly dry, fine, and pretty mild up to the new year. We have got good agreement on that. The uncertainty really starts a little bit beyond that. So this is week 2. This is when the uncertainty with the GFS of the ECM and the icon and all the other models are creeping in. This is the 3rd to the 9th of January. The CFS wants to have above average heights to the south-southwest, but also extending it into the UK and to the north as well. So these are pretty dry still, generally quite mild, although much of northeastern, eastern Europe being plunged into the freezer with this trough of low pressure sinking down the eastern side of Europe. But we're still on the milder side of the ridging in week 2. Then in week 3, which is the 10th through to 16th of January, we go very unsettled. Low pressure breaks through from off the Atlantic. The high pressure is forced down towards Spain and Portugal. That sends us into a flat westerly flow. So that's a little bit of an Atlantic onslaught running up to the middle part of January. Probably very stormy. And then we go through to week 4, which is the 17th to the 23rd of January. But below average heights then are being placed over and to the east of the UK. And notice heights rising significantly towards Greenland. The ridge to our southwest is weakening. It's still there a little bit down towards the Canary Islands, but it is a lot weaker. And so that looks like it's starting to develop a cold pattern, a much colder pattern potentially, with the winds possibly turning into the north, maybe even the northeast, between the low pressure that's over and to the east of the UK and the blocking that's up towards Greenland. That would almost certainly be a response to the southern stratospheric warming, because it's week 4, so that is very unreliable. And in the more reliable time frame, which is kind of like up to New Year, it looks pretty straightforward. High pressure is going to be incontrollable weather. It's going to be mainly dry, quite mild up to New Year's Day, maybe a little bit colder by New Year's Day. The first week of January is when the uncertainty starts to come in. It looks like for initially we'll keep high pressure going. Then the question is, what happens with that high pressure? Does it stick around the UK, as the ECM wants to have it? Does it go north and possibly start to pull much colder air in from the northeast, as the icon model is showing? Or does it just collapse down into the Black Sea and we go off and running into an Atlantic onslaught type pattern, as the GFS shows? There are lots of options on the table, and as we saw from the ECM ensembles, even they are really split 50-50 between colder, drier, high pressure dominated scenarios or wetter, windier, low pressure dominated scenarios at day 10. So loads of uncertainty, and we're just going to have to watch this space and see what happens. I expect a lot of this confusion is being caused by the sudden stratospheric warming that we've been talking about so very much over the past couple of weeks. And we're still, I don't think the models really have started showing the response to this sudden stratospheric warming yet, as it's only still happening. The models don't know and can't see what the impacts will be. So I think it's just a case of watch this space, expect more uncertainty, expect a bit of a roller coaster up and down with the model output over the next few days and next couple of weeks. And we'll have to see where we get to by the time we get to the middle of January. Right, so that's all for today's video. Tomorrow, as I said, we've got January, Friday, and a week to 10-day video update coming up. The videos are beginning to get back to some normality now after being a little bit all over the place over Christmas. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.